They say you're cold, but you're just not hooked anymore. You used to explain everything, soften your truth, chase clarity, fix moods that weren't yours to carry. And for that, you were called kind, empathic, warm. Now you don't react, you don't rush, you don't reach. And suddenly, you're cold, distant, too detached. You didn't turn cold. You just stopped being emotionally available on cue. The silence that once felt heavy now feels clean. The urge to respond now feels optional. The guilt that used to trigger movement now passes through you without owning you. They call that coldness. But maybe it's something else. Maybe it's wisdom. Because there comes a moment where you realize feeling everything doesn't mean reacting to everything. You still care, you still sense, but you don't collapse anymore. Not to pressure, not to tone, not to expectations wrapped in subtle guilt. And that shift, that ability to feel without fusing, is not the absence of emotion. It's the mastery of it. This isn't about shutting down. It's about staying open without losing your center. That's not disconnection, that's detachment. And that's where we begin. Detachment isn't numbness, it's non-reactivity. You think detachment means you stopped feeling, that you shut something off, closed something down. But that's not detachment. That's freezing, and they're not the same. Freezing is fear. Detachment is choice. Freezing numbs you. Detachment sharpens you. One is collapse. The other is clarity. You still feel it. You still sense the tension in the room. You still hear what they didn't say. But you don't chase. You don't fix. You don't move. Unless it's your move. That's detachment. It's not coldness. It's containment. You've learned to feel without letting the feeling drive your next behavior. That's the difference. You used to respond to tone. Now you notice it and do nothing. You used to match energy. Now you observe it and stay clean. You used to mirror sadness, guilt, pressure. Now you witness it like data, without leaking your own system into theirs. They say you've changed. You have. You're no longer emotionally available for programming. Detachment is not about being less human. It's about being less programmable. And in a world that wants you to keep reacting, detachment becomes the highest form of protection. It doesn't look impressive. It looks boring, silent, still. But that stillness is what stops you from being owned. This isn't about emotional distance. It's about emotional architecture. And now we go deeper into how to build it. Signs. You're detached, not disconnected. People think you don't care, but the truth is, you just don't bleed for everything anymore. You're not colder, you're clearer. And here's how you know you're not disconnected. You're detached. 1. You still hear what's being said, but you no longer feel the need to respond. Someone's upset? You listen, but you don't rush to comfort, or correct, or fix. You let the emotion exist without making it yours to solve. 2. You stay in the room, but your nervous system doesn't move. You feel the shift in tone, the subtle tension, the bait, but your body stays still. No tightening, no performance, just presence. Clean, grounded. 3. You feel love. You feel love without turning it into proof. You show up without seeking a return. You care without becoming the emotional janitor. You're not performing for closeness. You're choosing connection without self-erasure. 4. You can feel their disappointment and still not change your decision. You don't need everyone to agree or approve. You can let them feel what they feel while you hold what's true. That's not detachment from others. That's connection to self. 5. You no longer explain yourself just to keep people from misreading you. If they misunderstand, you don't chase their clarity, because their version of you was never yours to manage. This is what detachment looks like. It's not withdrawal, it's internal containment. It's the ability to stay soft internally and still not move externally, unless it's your move. People won't always understand it. That's okay. You didn't build this to be understood. You built it to be free. Attachment creates noise. Detachment creates signal. Attachment is loud. It scrambles your clarity, scrambles your response. You don't hear what's real. You hear what you hope it means. You don't respond to the moment. You respond to the outcome you're attached to. They shift their tone. You panic. They seem distant. You spiral. They don't answer fast enough. You collapse into overthinking. Not because the moment is intense, but because you've made their energy the compass for your nervous system. That's what attachment does. It turns you into a reactive receiver instead of a calibrated signal. Now compare that to detachment. You hear the same words, but they don't shake your center. You see the same look, but you don't auto-adjust your frame. You feel the same tension. But you stay clean because you're no longer anchored to interpretation. Attachment makes you noisy inside. Detachment makes you readable to yourself. And when your system is quiet, your truth gets louder. You don't need validation to stay stable. You don't need agreement to feel grounded. You know what's yours. You know the difference between clean signal and urgency disguised as truth. You let the rest pass through unconverted. This is why detachment feels so unfamiliar, because it's not about the absence of emotion. It's the absence of emotional entanglement. You can love without possession. You can care without panic. You can connect without collapsing. And when you do, you become the person who doesn't get moved just because the room shifted. You stay still, not as defense, but as design. That's the difference between emotion-driven behavior and energy-led command. And now we'll break it down step by step. Cold Detachment Protocol. 3 tactical steps to maintain inner stillness. Detachment doesn't happen by default. It's not your personality. It's a system, built, tested, trained. Here's how Cold Mind protects it. 1. Witness the pull. Every emotional hook begins the same way. A tone shift, a silence, a moment that whispers, move, fix. Prove your body tenses. Your attention narrows. You prepare to act. But before you do, pause the code. Don't label the emotion. Don't judge it. Just see it. Something is trying to pull me out of center. That's awareness. And awareness ends automation. 2. Pause the signal. You don't need to feel better. You just need to hold still. Detachment doesn't mean numb. It means you don't let the first wave carry your behavior. No reply, no explanation, no softening, just stillness. Not silence out of fear, but silence out of frame. In this pause, the nervous system resets. Not because you're safe, but because you refuse to move just to relieve tension. And that's power. 3. Choose stillness over resolution. This is where most people lose. They want closure. They want to make things feel okay. They want to be understood before they can stay calm. But cold detachment isn't reactive stillness. It's independent stillness. You hold form even if the situation doesn't resolve, even if they stay distant, even if you never explain your side. You don't stay still to be fair. You stay still to stay free. You stay still because nothing's worth trading your internal clarity. This is the Cold Detachment Protocol. Witness the pull. Pause the signal. Choose stillness over emotional resolution. Run it often. And you stop being someone who gets emotionally moved just because the environment shifted. You become the person who holds even when it would feel better to move. Final message. Stillness isn't coldness, it's command. You've seen it before. The person who doesn't flinch, doesn't explain, doesn't react. You provoke, they don't bite. You withdraw, they don't chase. You test, they don't move. They're not cold. They're calibrated. They're not distant. They're just not programmable anymore. You feel their presence, but you can't shift it because it wasn't built to please you. It was built to protect command. That's not apathy. That's architecture. A system that doesn't leak just because someone else's signal gets loud. A nervous system that doesn't contort just to maintain closeness. They can feel your sadness without carrying it. They can witness your spiral without entering it. They stay open without being accessible for override. That's detachment, not distance. Discipline. This is where cold mind lives, not in emotional absence, but in emotional sovereignty. In the next video, we'll break down relational power, why the person who's least attached to outcome or approval always holds the frame. Subscribe. Feel fully.